We at POGO investigate corruption and other misconduct. Our work is designed to help get a more effective, ethical, accountable, and open federal government. Pretty fun stuff. And when I describe our work, I usually get one of two reactions. The first is, oh, wow, you guys are always going to be busy. And I'm glad you're doing this stuff in Washington because I don't want to deal with it. The other reaction I get is, well, I hope you're pointing out those bad guys who are responsible for the imminent demise of our democracy. And what I find is, it's kind of a fill in the blank. Those bad guys, they're either politically active conservative billionaires on the right, the Koch brothers, or politically active billionaire on the left, George Soros. So what I can tell you as someone who's coming from an organization that 30 years ago was created with Koch brothers' money and is currently receiving Soros Foundation funds, these men are not responsible for our problems in Washington. I would suggest that if anyone is to blame, it's all of us. It's our willingness, even our eagerness, to sit back in our tribal political camps that's to blame. It's that us versus them demonize the other side while feeling safe in our sense of belonging that's to blame. So what do I mean by that? Olbermann versus Beck, Hannity versus The Ed Show, talk radio, our Twitter news feeds, sitting in the coffee house or having a tea, depending on which camp you're in. Now, are you really hearing conversations about the problems you care about and how to fix them? Or are you hearing people talking about making fun of the other side, challenging the legitimacy of those protesters on the other side? And I know some of you are leaning over to your friends right now and saying, I hate it when those people do that to our people, but your people are doing it to their people too. And how often during those conversations, they're not really conversations, those rants, are you hearing people who say, you know, I really can't stand how Washington's not getting anything done that I care about? And are you party of those conversations? What are you really doing to fix those problems? So word in Washington now is that the leadership of both the Republican and Democratic parties have told their members not to work with the other side. Now, does that sound like a problem? I mean, a way to fix our problems? There are entities that are actually benefiting from these divisions. The political parties, the political media, lobbyists, campaign contributors. Their jobs are actually simplified with these divisions because their work is really not about making our government more responsible and responsive. So a healing of our divisions, a fixing of our problems, a breaking of our gridlock is actually counter to their interests because their goal is to get more than the other guy has. More money, more members, more viewers. And so if we're waiting for them to fix the problems, it's not going to happen. I had a fascinating experience one week this summer where I was able to see how these divisions really impacted what happens in Washington. I was engaging with some of the iconic figures across the political spectrum. So on a Tuesday, I got a call from Ralph Nader. And he said he was terribly concerned because the debt ceiling debate was just starting. And his concern was that both Democrats and Republicans in Congress were really focused on scoring points against the other side and really talking in an information vacuum. And he was totally right. The next day, I went to a regular Wednesday morning meeting of conservatives that's organized by activist Grover Norquist, and Michelle Bachmann was speaking at that meeting as well. And what I saw there was such an us versus them mentality, where they're protecting jobs against a really malicious government. The following day, I was having coffee at the West Wing of the White House with a senior official, and yet again I saw from their eyes that they were well-meaning policymakers who were really being prevented from implementing reforms by malicious anti-government forces. Again, just us versus them. And what struck me was that neither side would have recognized the caricature of the other that they believed. And what was also important for me to recognize was that neither camp was as clearly defined as the other believed it was. So let me give you an example of that. Most peace activists believe that our bloated defense budget is is really because of Republicans. But when there was an opportunity a couple of years ago to really cut a wasteful weapons system, the overpriced F-22 fighter jet, the leading advocate for ending that production line was John McCain. And some of the people who were fighting hardest to protect that weapons system were Democrats who were working with labor unions. So rather than just accepting this red versus blue society that's being painted for us by people who actually are sort of benefiting from these divisions, let's look at some of the issues that matter so much to our people that they are actually literally going to the streets and protest. Where do you think this sign is coming from? Do you think this is a protest on Wall Street, or is this Tea Party? It's actually a Tea Party sign demanding an end to the Afghanistan war. But what you'll see is a very similar message at an Occupy Wall Street rally. So whether you're coming at this issue by being anti-war or just really being fed up with billions of your tax dollars going down the drain, you're coming to the same conclusion and agreeing. Here's another example. Obviously, the Occupy Wall Street protesters were originally motivated because they were really angry that Wall Street had done so much to protect that Washington had done so much to protect Wall Street. And this is one of their signs. But here you see a very similar message at a Tea Party rally, something that they can really agree on. As was mentioned earlier, transparency in government, we all love it, but we don't get much of it. Here's a sign from an Occupy Wall Street protester, and again, demands for transparency at a Tea Party rally. So clearly there are differences in the perspective of what the government's role should be between these camps, but as you can also see, there are tremendous commonalities where if we actually were dealing with the issues rather than spending our time attacking the other side, we could be actually accomplishing something. But if we're waiting for the powers that be in Washington to do it, it's just not going to happen. It's really up to us. So I would say there are three things we need to change about how we're operating. The first, when you sit down tonight to watch MSNBC or Fox, listen with a critical mind. What are you hearing? Are you hearing information that's helping you fix problems and make things better? Or are you just feeling sort of comfortable sitting in your comfort zone and attacking the other side? I'm asking you to reach outside your comfort zone and expand your sense of place in the political spectrum to think a little bit more about what you're hearing. All of us have someone in our lives that we like, who's a really good friend, but we just think they're off the rails politically. Maybe it's a childhood friend, or it's a family member, or it's a neighbor. And you're used to this debate and teasing, but this time, can you sit down with them and actually really talk to them and understand why they care about the issues that they're talking about? And I suspect you might learn something. And finally, start paying attention to your town council, your school board, your county commission. Important decisions are being made there. And what's important is if you begin to get involved at that level, it's a meaningful engagement in the political process, and maybe you'll get a taste for it. We are now facing elections where there's going to be unprecedented money pouring into the coffers. It's going to continue to be dividing us. But we are not powerless. We are only powerless if we're comfortable sitting on our butts and throwing stones at the other side. I am not suggesting that what we need to do is all move to the center and lose our outrage. I'm saying embrace our outrage, but find those issues that make you outraged and find those people who also are outraged, either in your camp or maybe in the other camp, and start to see what you can do about it. So, who's ready? Do you want to grab a coffee or maybe a cup of tea? And let's start talking.